How's it going, y'all? Jack Mycologist here, back with another video. Today we're going to be making substrate, specifically Coco Coir, Vermiculite, and worm castings. So today we're going to need a few items before we get started. A cooler or bucket with a lid, a pot, a bag of vermiculite, a bag of earthworm castings, a brick of Coco Coir, a scale, 70% isopropyl alcohol, hydrogen peroxide, and lastly, paper towels. For this recipe, we're basing it off of the Coco Coir, right? So we have a 650 gram brick of Coco Coir, and we're building the rest of our ingredients off of that. With that being said, if you're using one 650 gram brick of Coco Coir, you need 1 cup of earthworm castings and 4 quarts of vermiculite. Simple as that. So for our first step, we're going to measure out our water, that way we can get it boiling while we do the rest of the other steps. So because there's so much water, I'm going to need to use a second pot. But for our first pot, we have 3,074 milliliters. So if we have 3,074 for the first pot, plus 1,265 for the second, that would leave us with 4,339 milliliters. All right, the next step we're gonna wanna do is to sanitize and sterilize our tub or our bucket. So what I have here is 70% isopropyl alcohol and hydrogen peroxide. And the order that I'm going to do this in is very important. So what we're going to do first is get our hydrogen peroxide, and we're going to douse, just absolutely hose the interior of the tub or cooler or bucket, whatever you're using. The reason I'm using a cooler is because we are doing a pasteurization process. Okay, pasteurization just means keeping a relatively high temp, a bit low compared to other sterilization techniques. Is sustaining that temperature for a long time to weed out any bacteria, spores, whatever may be living organisms inside, whatever it may be. Our mycelium later on wants to grow in it. It has the best chance at taking all of that nutrient. It's going to be there, it's going to be ready for the taking, okay? So you can see I just hosed down. I'll even do it excessively. You cannot be too generous with peroxide, okay? We're also going to do the lid. And back to why I was talking about why I have a cooler. So with this pasteurization process, the slower the cool down, the better. The longer it stays at these high temperatures, the more it kills off, okay? With a bucket, it works great, especially if it's sealed. It has a great seal on it, even better. But a bucket is not as insulated as a cooler may be, okay? A great way to go around this is with a towel, okay? So if you have a 5-gallon bucket and you want to keep the insulation even better and have the cool down last even longer, what you can do is you can get your bucket, once you've done all those steps afterwards, and what you'll do is you'll wrap your bucket in a towel or 2, even blankets, whatever you can to insulate the bucket and let it slow down the cool is going to be for the better, okay? So again, peroxiding everything. I even peroxided the outside of the tub. Again, can't be too safe with this. And then we're going to close our tub or our bucket or our cooler, whatever it is. Go ahead and put the lid on there, and we're going to let this sit for 10 minutes, okay? Minimum 10 minutes. Peroxide is a thing that takes time to be effective, and the minimum for spores, not even all spores, mind you, this is just for some, is 10 minutes, okay? So we're gonna let this sit for 10 minutes, let it kill off anything and everything that it possibly can. All right, y'all, it's been 10 minutes of this peroxide sitting. So what we're gonna do next is we're gonna grab a paper towel and some isopropyl, give it a light Just a light spray, not too heavy. We're not trying to soak the paper towel because we're going to soak a lot of this peroxide up. We just want to make sure that the surface of the towel itself isn't too covered in germs so that we're spreading germs across, right? So, that being said, we'll go ahead and wipe down your cooler or your bucket. And during this stage, an important tip to note is that when we're cleaning our lid, when we're done cleaning our lid, we do not want to go take our lid and just go put it down on the ground or whatever surface lid side down, because then we'd be getting this clean surface all dirtied up again, okay? So that being said, I'm gonna set this on the countertop facing upward, and we're gonna continue wiping down our cooler. Alright, so now that we got all that hydrogen peroxide soaked up, what we're gonna do is we're gonna grab our spray bottle of 70% isopropyl alcohol, and basically doing the exact same thing we did with the peroxide, except this time we don't have to leave it to sit for 10 minutes. This is just a final cleanup. A final cleanup of any germs, bacteria, and such that may have just quickly fallen on there during the process. I'm just trying to get it nice and cleaned up. You don't need to wipe all of it off because it will evaporate off. But we don't want a pool of isopropyl in the bottom, obviously. And then we'll grab our lid and sit it back in there. So now we have a sterile cooler ready for all of our ingredients. Now that we have a sterile cooler, we're going to add our first ingredient, which is our 650 gram brick of Coco Coir. And we're just going to toss it in there. And put the lid back on so nothing's going to fall from the surface or moving air into our clean cooler. The next step we're going to do is measure out our vermiculite. We're going to measure out 4 quarts of vermiculite, and I will measure that out and convert it into grams. All right, so my scale turned off on me, but that's okay. I got the measurement before it turned off. We should have around 544 grams of vermiculite. Lots of room for error because we're translating volume into weight, which completely different. All right, so now we have this measured out. Let's go back to our cooler. All right, now that we're back at our cooler, we're gonna open it up, toss the vermiculite inside, and close it. Simple as that. Same principle. We don't need to do any mixing of any sort. They're all dry, so we can't really mix the brick of Coco Coir with the vermiculite anyways. But we won't mix it even when we add the worm castings. Speaking of worm castings, let's measure that out. I'm using Worm Bliss Premium Earthworm Castings. I have a cup here, and we just need to measure out 1 cup. Well, we'll say 150 grams. We'll just make it an even 150. You might be asking, Jack Mycologist, why do we add worm castings to our substrate? Earthworm castings are packed full of nutrients, phosphorus, nitrogen, calcium, all sorts of goodies that the mycelium is going to use later when it needs to start its reproductive cycle and form its fruiting bodies, aka mushrooms. All right, we're back at our cooler, and as we mentioned before, we're not going to mix any of our ingredients. We're just going to toss them in there and close the lid. And while we were doing the rest of our other steps, our water has began to boil. So again, this is our 5.5 quarts or 4,360 milliliters of water. Our next step is going to be putting our hot water into our cooler with our ingredients. Be careful when you're pouring. There's going to be a lot of steam coming up. You don't want to get steam burns. Saying this from experience. And this is the one time we're gonna open our cooler up and just kind of let it air for a second so we can pour our water. Like I said, lots of steam, be careful. Then you're gonna put your lid on, okay? If you have a bucket that has a sealing ring, you're gonna snap that sealing ring closed, okay? If you have a cooler that has a latch it. If you have anything that can snap down or get sealed, lock it up like Fort Knox, okay? And now our ingredients are all gonna pasteurize together, okay? That hot water is gonna combine, the steam is gonna steam the Coco Coir brick so it expands, okay? This is why I say we don't need to mix right now. This steam, this hot water is already gonna penetrate into that Coco Coir to let it expand, all right? And that's, we're just gonna let it do its thing, okay? And then eventually, when I say eventually, I mean in 8 to 24 hours, we are going to open this and then we can mix it. So, I will catch up with you guys in 8 to 24 hours. All right, so it's been 24 hours. We let this sit overnight and during the day, and now we're back. So what we're gonna need next, grab your isopropyl alcohol, and you can use gloves or you can choose not to. I don't use gloves because whenever I use gloves and I'm mixing it up, a piece of dirt will always fall into the glove. And I'm like, okay, well, what's the point of the glove, right? So you have isopropyl alcohol, just freaking douse the crap out of your hands and your arms all over. Just, because remember, the soil was just pasteurizing and we want to kill as much bacteria as we can. Like you can see my arms are dripping with alcohol. I'll just let it evaporate off. It's fine. I'd rather have too much than too little. Maybe did a little excessive. Man, we went a little heavy on the sauce. That's okay though. That's okay. Make sure you get it all under the nails and everything. With that being said, let's go ahead and open this up. And what we're gonna do, we're gonna open it up. We're gonna start mixing the ingredients together into a homogeneous mixture. And then I'm gonna show you what field capacity is. And yeah, we'll just go from there. All right, so we got the lid off. And as you can see, that steam penetrated that Coco Coir brick. As you can see, it's just falling apart. No effort at all. So that's why I was saying we don't need to mix or shake our bucket or stir or anything like that with our cooler, because the steam is gonna penetrate into everything and it's gonna loosen all of that dehydrated Coco Coir. And usually what happens is the vermiculite, when I pour the water in, it'll slosh it all over and the vermiculite will settle to the bottom usually. So make sure you're mixing it, get your hands down the bottom there, and just, again, get a nice homogeneous mixture going here. Break up these little Coco Coir clumps as best you can. Doesn't have to be perfect, doesn't have to be absolutely no clumps or anything like that. There can be some clumps here and there, that's okay. It should look like this. You see the vermiculite throughout the soil, it shines like that. That's a good homogeneous mixture right there. What I found as well is you'll put the worm castings in and then they'll just slosh to one corner, right here or there, wherever it may be. So we just want to make sure to get wherever those worm castings are, just make sure they're really all up in here. And what I've noticed as far as visuals go with adding worm castings, it does tend to make the soil or substrate a bit darker than regular Coco Coir and vermiculite, but not that much, not very substantial. So, as you can see, hands dirty, but with good dirt. All right, so let's talk about field capacity. What I mean by field capacity is the ideal moisture content of your substrate when you're gonna send it. When I say send it, I mean send it to spawn to bulk. It's another phrase for it. Either way, we just wanna make sure that there's enough water in here that's gonna feed the mycelium, but not too much. Okay, not too much, because then that's gonna allow for other bacteria to grow, such as bacillus. Okay, bacillus really loves wet rot and really loves excess moisture. So, what you're gonna do to test your soil here, your substrate, you're gonna grab a handful. Simple as that, okay? What you're gonna do is you're gonna squeeze this handful, and what we're gonna look for is either a small stream or like
a small stream to drops, okay? Not a full, I'm not gonna squeeze this and it's gonna be a full stream, you know? I'm gonna squeeze it, there's gonna be some drops, it might stream a little bit, but nothing crazy, okay? So watch. I'll do multiple examples, don't worry. Okay, let's get all this extra so there's nothing falling off. Ready? Squeezing. See those drops coming down? Right? That's me squeezing pretty hard. That's a good example of field capacity. We'll grab another handful. We'll go over here in this corner here, do the same thing. A piece of Coco Coir. Same thing. You're gonna grab it, and you're just gonna squeeze. We'll get this cleaned up so you can see those water droplets again. We're gonna, let me focus here real quick. There we go. Squeeze, drops, drops. Right? See those drops coming? Just like that. So yeah, pretty easy to do. As far as how much I'm squeezing, I'm not squeezing and giving it my all. I'm not squeezing the ever-living heck out of this thing at all. No. I'm just giving it a nice firm squeeze where I can see some droplets coming out. I can still feel there's some moisture in the soil. I'm not trying to squeeze all of the moisture out or anything like that. I'm just trying to give it a nice firm, just to check. Squeeze. Okay, that's a good amount of water right there. If you were to squeeze just barely and a stream of water comes down, that'd be bad. That'd be excess water. That means more possibilities for contamination, okay? And on the other side of the spectrum, if you were to squeeze this thing with all of your might and no water came out, or just like 3 or 4 droplets, that's it, and you squeeze as hard as you can, it's probably a sign that you need to add more water. And that is really easy, thankfully. If you want to add more water, all you gotta do, boil up another quart or 2 of water, and then just toss it in here, put your lid back on, put your lid on your cooler or your bucket, whatever it is, seal it again, wrap it in a towel if you need to, and just do the whole process over again of letting it sit for 24 hours. I've done that before, had no problems with it. So with that being said, that is how you make Coco Coir Vermiculite worm casting substrate. Stay tuned for the next video, guys. It's gonna be how to combine our last 2 videos, the no soap, no simmer millet jars, where we're gonna make our spawn. We're gonna combine that with this tutorial, and we're gonna show you how to create a tub and get it ready for conditions for fruiting. With that being said, y'all, stay tuned. I'm excited to be back making videos. Have a good one.